Greetings, everyone. Good morning. Good to have you all today. Let me see if we have all of our speakers here joining us. Yes, here we go. Good morning, everyone. Good day. It is a few seconds, well, almost a minute over the 12 mark. So let's get it going. The weather is really nice and sunny where I'm joining you from. I hope you have a nice weather as well. So today I am excited to join you to discuss the Construction Products Regulation, which is an important EU regulation that was revised in 2024 and entered into force just at the beginning of 2025. My name is Melina. I'm responsible for sustainability communications here at One Click LCA. And today joining us from the team is also Yana Kantseva. Yana is an LCA and EPT consultant with expertise in regulation at CPR and CPR.
Hi all. It's nice to be here with you today.
Lovely. So I'm just gonna share our slides, and you will also have the presentation at the end of this session. So what do we have today? Today we're gonna focus on what is the Construction Products Regulation. We'll talk about the relevant regulations and the implementation timeline, the requirements for manufacturers based on the new CPR, what we're expecting next to come in terms of the regulation, what manufacturers need to do, and then we will close it off with a lovely Q&A. So please drop your questions to the tab, and let's get started. So I'm going to pass it over now to Yana.
Thanks, Melina. So let's begin with the fundamentals. What exactly is the CPR and its revised version? So the CPR stands for the Construction Product Regulation, and this is a key piece of the European legislation related to construction product because it establishes a standardized framework for the construction products across the entire European Union. The primary goal of the CPR is to ensure the free movement of construction products within the single market by setting certain requirements related to safety, performance, and the more recent requirement related to environmental impacts. Originally, the regulation was published back in 2011. However, during the past 10 to 15 years, the focus on sustainability has become more and more intense. So the European Commission recognized the need for an update of this regulation in order to reflect these modern challenges related to environmental indicators, specifically related to construction products. So the main elements that we will discuss today related to the revised CPR include the enhanced CE marking provisions, also the digital product passports, which are a new element in the regulation, and of course, the environmental reporting standards. All of these impacts, can we go to the next slide, please? All of these impacts a wide range of stakeholders. Probably the most important role in this process would be for the manufacturers of construction products, both within the European context, but also outside Europe. Manufacturers who want to sell their products on the European market should also follow the provisions of the CPR. In a certain way, these provisions also are important for suppliers and service providers, as well as importers and distributors. And there are also provisions even for the online marketplace of construction products. The CPR is not a standalone regulation. It is related to a number of other documents and directives already available within the European framework. Within this, as you can see on the scheme, there is the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulations, which sets performance and information requirements for products on the single market. Together with the CPR, the ESPR will be used to provide the widest possible coverage for products within the construction sector and also beyond it. Based on these two regulations, there will be a lot of information available related to technical and environmental performance. And this data will be then fed into other important initiatives, for example, the levels methodology or other sustainability assessment methodologies for buildings. Also the EU taxonomy and also the environmental performance of buildings directive and also the energy efficiency directive. These are also related to the provisions of the CPR and the ESPR. Since this enhanced process for CE marking and technical and environmental reporting requires much more complex activities and processes to be implemented by manufacturers and other stakeholders, it is of course recognized that there is still a certain period needed for a transition between the current and previous version of the CPR and the new updated CPR document. With this in mind, we are currently at the end of the so-called preparatory phase, because at the end of 2025, the CPR will officially be launched for application, and it will require mandatory declaration of the carbon footprints of products, or the so-called GWP indicators. By October 2026, the member states should provide and must notify their penalties for non-compliance. And then by the end of 2026, an impact assessment on green public procurement is expected. So within the next 3, 4, 5 years, until 2029 and 2030, it is expected to have a lot of harmonized standards to be published, and also European assessment documents to be updated and new documents being published, so that the new process would be fully set up. By the end of 2029, all core environmental indicators which are currently used in environmental declarations would be mandatory for inclusion in the Declaration of Performance and Conformity for Construction Products. And a year later, by the end of 2030, the current European assessment documents will no longer be valid. So from this date on, their updated or new documents versions will be required for conformity with the CPR. And I think it is clear that all this process will happen gradually, not at once, as long as we have the relevant standards and documents in place. Previous or standards which are no longer applicable will be eventually phased out. Now, what are the CPR requirements? We mentioned 3 main aspects of the CPR, which we cover today. The first one is the CE marking. The CE marking is not a new thing in the CPR, but its role is now enhanced because getting the CE mark will require a certain additional effort from manufacturer and their partners. The CE marking indicates that the product meets certain declared performance, both technical and environmental, and that this performance complies with the harmonized European standards related to it. By affixing it, the manufacturer takes full responsibility for the compliance of that product. On the right side, you can see how the CE marking looks in an example label. So it contains, of course, the distinct CE marking label, also the name of the manufacturer and its location, the address, a unique identification number follows further down, and of course, one of the important elements, this is the harmonized standard with which this performance complies. The label then lists the name of the products and its intended use, and further down, the essential characteristics according to the harmonized standards are listed so that any user, buyer, or architect or designer can get a very quick overview of the characteristics of this product. The next important element, which is practically a new element for the declaration of performance, is its enhanced contents. So the current declaration of performance is replaced by the declaration of performance and conformity. It is mandatory for all CE marked products and includes three main types of information modules within this declaration. The first one and the second one are related to any technical documentations from practical tests or assessments of the technical characteristics of the product. And then, of course, description of the intended declared use of the product. The new part in the declaration of performance will be the environmental indicators, including, like I mentioned at first, the carbon footprint, and then adding all other core environmental indicators as currently used in the EPDs. How these characteristics will be assessed and declared will be clarified in the relevant harmonized technical specifications, for example, harmonized standards or European assessment documents as applicable for the product category. We'll set a bit more the light on the environmental performance because it is phased out over time. Like I mentioned at first, the first closest deadline would be to be able to report the carbon footprint of the product and energy used during manufacturing. Then within the next 4 years, according to the official time frame, there will be harmonized standards for each product family under the CPR that will clarify how all the core indicators as per EN 15804 would be calculated and declared. As soon as there is a standard for your product or your product family, the CPR allows an 18-month period for you to fully implement this calculation and provide the environmental footprint in the declaration of performance. Some 2 years later, additional metrics also currently included in EPDs related to health, human health, and toxicity indicators will be also included in the declaration of performance, so that the environmental tables in this declaration will very much look like the current EPDs that we make and provide to the market. This is to say that if you already have an EPD process in place or are you planning to do that in the near future, this means that you will be a lot more prepared for the CPR requirement and declarations that are required. All this information from the Declaration of Performance will be included in the so-called Digital Product Passport. This is a system for a repository and collection of all data related to construction products into one place called the Digital Product Passport system. And it is relatively new. This concept is used both by the CPR and the ESPR, and most likely will share the same format and the same process for providing to the market. What the Digital Product Passport will contain, you can see a list of the most important elements. This will be, of course, a unique product identifier for the product and manufacturer and manufacturing location. The Declaration of Performance with its all chapters and various information modules, any technical documentation, and legal compliance documents, for example, CE markings. User manuals and safety instructions will also be added to the DPP. Labels, if applicable, can also be shared. One important aspect is the end-of-life handling information, which will ensure that when the product reaches its end of life, then it can be handled and processed in a safe way and eventually recycled or incinerated. Any other data carriers or other documents according to other applicable European laws and regulation will also be included depending on the product category. Now there are two main aspects, like I mentioned. One is the technical documentation and general product information, which will be part of the Digital Product Passport. And it is important both for manufacturers, but also for end users, because it will ensure the user safety, users that install or store or process in some way this product. It will ensure the right and safe application so that the product is used according to its intended use, and then it can provide the intended performance, both technical and environmental. Then legal compliance is important because filling all these requirements as required by the CPR is a legal obligation for this product to be allowed on the European market. And of course, since all this information will have to go through very serious assessment and testing methods, then there is a certain liability that will provide clear and accurate information. The second part is the environmental part. I'm not going to list all these indicators. Probably some of you, most of you are already familiar with them. These are the core environmental indicators according to EN 15804 plus A2. This is the standard used as PCR, global PCR for environmental product declaration. You can see this is quite a long list. And these are expected to be implemented in the same way as they are now used in EPDs. In order to provide the transparency about all this information and complex data that is supposed to go into the Digital Product Passport, there is a certain documentation that needs to be prepared and verified. The CPR sets up a system for assessment and verification of constancy of performance, or the so-called ABCP. And there are different levels of such ABCP systems depending on the type of information and data modules that are included in the Declaration of Performance. AVCP3+ is the system that will be used to verify the environmental performance of construction products. This means that what manufacturers or their partners would have to prepare would include a life cycle assessment, quite similar to the EPD process, so that they provide a transparent proof for the verifiers by which they can certify that all aspects, inputs, outputs, and so on, are included and correctly assessed according to the harmonized standards. This would include also collecting and analyzing data from suppliers or partners related to the product environmental footprint. And in order to streamline that process and make it more easier and avoid any delays, it is good if the manufacturers establish and maintain some internal quality system so that they can track the consistency and ensure the consistency of the product's performance, both on technical and environmental level. So all this documentation will be verified by notified bodies. Notified bodies will be appointed according to their experience, according to their professional qualities, and they will have to verify the key performance claims related to, like I said, environmental and technical assessment to ensure that the results and the data that is declared conform with the relevant standards. According to the CPR, factory audits are also expected to be done in order to confirm that the modeled production process matches the declared performance of the product. All this verified data in the digital product passport supports the CE marking and compliance across any other regulation across the European Union.
Jana, I have a question for you here. When you mention factory audits, does this mean that all manufacturers can expect an audit to come according to comply with CPR?
Yeah, that's a very good question indeed. Thanks, Melina. So according to the CPR, the answer is yes. It is not yet exactly clear how these factory audits will be organized, or will they be mandatory for each single product. So we are following up for any updates by the European Commission on that matter, and we'll see over time.
Thank you, Jana. So now Jana has completed the requirements according to CPR, and we'll move on to what we're expecting next to come. So the DPP, Digital Product Passport System, how it's working, what will be required, and how. So a question that we get very often is that who will be able to update the data on a DPP? And that is primarily manufacturers and authorized representatives, importers, distributors, all the people that Jana mentioned before will be allowed to introduce or update information in the DPP. The system will establish detailed rules for updating the information for existing product, and if necessary, for even creating a new DPP for your product. So these are to come. The DPP system will be accessible in an accredited DPP service provider for 25 years after the last product of its type has been placed on the market, and the manufacturer is obligated to keep it available for at least 10 years in the service providers. And now let's move on to what the priority product groups for the CPR look like. The CPR makes, there are in total about 36 categories in the CPR, and their priorities are based on their environmental footprint and their carbon intensive character. For products which don't fall under the scope, the ESPR might be the regulation that applies. For example, this is the case with MEP products, which are not covered in CPR, but in the ESPR. So let's look at the top 6, let's say, priority groups, for which we'll have harmonized standards to come first. And this is precast and concrete products, structural metallic products and elements, reinforcing steel for concrete, doors, windows, shutters, gates, and related hardware, cement, building limes and binders, and thermal insulation products. These are the top priority groups, and this means that the harmonized standards will be prioritized for these specific products. Right, now moving on to what manufacturers actually need to do. How they can prepare for the CPR. There are many ways to prepare for CPR, and a very important first step is to upgrade your digital systems, ensuring that your infrastructure supports digital product passports, lifecycle data capture, and BIM integrations. Then you need to collect and report environmental data in line with EN 15804 to streamline EPD creation and compliance. A very important step would also be to educate your team and staff on CPR environmental data and DPP requirements. This is a very important one, and platforms like OneClickLCA can definitely help you with that. Also important and very important step is to actually require reliable, accurate data from your suppliers in advance, as much in advance as you can. So then you'll have everything you need to move on to create your EPDs and your DPPs. So I do see many people asking about the scope and who will be affected from CPR. So which products fall under the scope of the new CPR? In short, all construction products that are covered by harmonized technical specification fall under CPR. That means that if a product has a European standard developed for it, it must comply with CPR requirements. For products that don't have such a standard, manufacturers can still choose to bring them into scope voluntarily by using what's called a European assessment document. Jana mentioned them briefly. That path allows them to get a CE marking if their product doesn't yet fall under a harmonized standard. So essentially, the CPR applies automatically to products with harmonized standards, while others can opt in voluntarily through the EAD route. All products that need to be marketed and want to be marketed in the EU are covered. So this is really relevant for manufacturers also outside of the EU, the US, the UK, China, Australia. Everyone who wants to market in the EU is affected and needs to comply. Now, how OneClickLCA can help you. As you very well know, OneClickLCA is the end-to-end sustainability leading platform for construction and manufacturing. Our platform hosts the industry's largest EPD database with over 300,000 construction products, and it helps designers, engineers, and product manufacturers analyze and reduce embodied carbon, comply with regulations, and publish third-party verified EPDs. So what about now? You will see a poll that will be displayed on your screen, and you can choose to click if you want to talk with an expert that can help you get ready for CPR. We have the EPD generator that offers an end-to-end solution for manufacturers and can help you create compliant EPDs to EN 15804. And then can also get support with our team. We have onboardings, we have experts like Jana who really know what they're doing. So please click yes if you want to book a free demo with OneClickLCA experts right now. Right, moving on. Now, thank you all for staying up to this moment. So now we will move on to the long-awaited Q&A, where Jana, because he's the actual expert, will reply and respond to your questions. So stay tuned, and we will move on to your questions right about now. And yeah. Right.
Thank you, Melina. So I see there are quite a lot of questions. And I will start with the first one. I can see Stephen already responded to some of them. Question from Anastasia is, will the CPR rule on all future product marking and environmental calculations what will happen to EPDs and existing PCR program operators? This is indeed a great question. So the CPR aims to provide the same common ground for construction products entering the European market. And as such, the environmental calculations are expected to cover mostly the manufacturing stage or modules A1 to A3. And you also saw that the full list of indicators will be gradually phased over the next 4 to 5 years. So with that in mind, the environmental declarations are still the tool to declare a full overview of the environmental performance of your product. And whether the CPR and the declaration of performance will replace CPDs, this is hard to say at the moment. So we need to wait and see how the harmonized standards will look like when they are published, and then we can discuss with more details. But we are all following this process. Okay, then, and EPDs are also verified documents. So I assume at first you will be able to use this information for compliance with the requirements of the CPR. Okay, so I see a question, are there any specific language requirements for the DPP for products right across European market? This is also a great question. So presumably the main language for this documentation will be English because they will be stored in a common repository. And it's highly possible that they will be available in any of the European languages. But the DPP system is still in process of establishment. So again, we're following the process and will be more detailed once we have the system in place. Then the next question, does the new CPR mean EPDs must be in place for all products on EU market? So yes, CPDs definitely help for meeting the requirements of the CPR. So having an EPD process in place will help you prepare for the requirement, and even will make it possible for you to directly feed environmental data to the declaration of performance, at least in this transition period until all harmonized standards are in place. Then we have another question from MED. What are the criteria for the factory control plan for the environmental aspects? That's a very good question. So all criteria for factory control are listed in the CPR. They will include transparency and accuracy in tracking data from your suppliers. They will include data collection procedures and any further indicators that are available in the CPR and can be checked also there. Okay. When another question from Markshit, I think, when inputting data from EPDs into building assessment tools, what quality indicators, e.g. data representatives, PCR alignment, are most critical to check? Also a very nice question, thanks for that. So when using EPD data for building assessment, that very much depends on the building assessment tool that you are using. And each of these tools, being it LEED or Levels or BREEAM or DGNB or any other, they have a very specific requirements for data from EPDs. and you can just check their criteria for their specific requirement. But of course, data representatives is important. PCR alignment also, any plans for potential reduction of the carbon footprint are also assessed, for example, in leads. So this depends on the assessment tool that you use. How does the new CPR affect products that were already CE marked under the outgoing regulation and are currently in the supply chain or in stock at distribution centers? Yeah, that's also a good question. So for all products that are already on the market and have this marking, they can remain with the current information available for that product until there is a harmonized standards or European assessment document for it. Like I said, for each product family, there will be a harmonized standard, and for certain products, there will be assessment documents. So once these harmonized standards are published and in place, manufacturers will have 18 months to provide the additional information that is required and to regain the CE marking for that product and provide the digital product passport to the central repository. Then our next question, what technical or digital infrastructure will be required to comply with the digital product passport system? Yes, indeed, also a great question. So currently the European Commission is in process of development of these systems, and there will be a clarification. We are expecting a clarification on the roles and the process of submitting data to that system. The idea is that all these documents will follow the same uniform format, the same the same outline of documents, the same list of documents. So once these requirements are published, we will be able to provide also more information and support for this process. Okay, I think this is
one final question. Time for one final question, Jana. I see one from Joshua. At the top, is there a recommended certification method for infrastructure construction within the EU?
Is there a recommended certification method for infrastructure construction? I would like maybe to leave that for a further meeting and clarification. It depends on where you want to get this certification. So if you want to get a certification for Europe, that would be mostly levels. I think this is the most common framework. And local systems like DGNB or the French system or BREEAM can also be used for other European countries. That depends on the market that you want to cover.
Jana, do you have time? Yeah, for one last question from Fernando.
Okay, thanks. So this is, will EPD provided by Manufacturers Association encompassing average data for a certain product still be accepted after those changes? Yeah, that's a tough question to follow up to. So indeed, EPDs providing average information can be useful for the transition phase. Whether they will be allowed for the digital product passport after the standards are available depends on what the harmonized standards require. So if, for example, the harmonized standards for concrete allows averaging within a manufacturer's facilities or associations, then they can be used. But all these rules will be specified in the relevant standards for each product family.
Thank you very much, Jana. And I think that marks the end of our questions and our Q&A. Thank you all for engaging and asking all these very, very useful questions. And thank you for attending. And if you want to stay tuned and register to more of our events or follow our content, because we do have a lot of educational content on regulations and what is required, you can follow us on LinkedIn, or you can subscribe to our newsletter. So it was lovely to be here with all of you today. Thank you, Jana, for joining us. And yeah, have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye from my side.